now. And all of you should be muted, but if you want to, you can unmute yourself to ask questions on anything at any time. And feel free to you know, ask questions, interrupt. It's only us, you know, and then myself, and then, and if possible, if you could, if you have questions, if you don't want to say it, chat me, or at the last meeting, people were emailing me and texting and using the chat. But today, if you could, you know, just use the chat function. Thank you. Without further ado, let's go on. Let's go into the meeting. So here's, darn, sorry. Here are the agenda items: important dates, fiscal reminders, Q&A from others for other sites, opportunity for sites to ask other sites questions. Remember, this was someone, this section was from someone that asked if at all of our meetings we could have this, you know, so that we could ask each other questions. And next, reminder of the desk monitoring tool, let's go learn discussion, and other requested items. And this is the link for our YouTube page, where there's all of our, oh, you're not seeing my screen? I'm so sorry. How about now? Are people seeing my screen?
Not yet, Sam.
How about now?
It just says Sam started screen sharing.
Darn.
There it is.
There it is. Okay, great, great. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Yep, so the agenda items, important dates, fiscal reminders, Q&A, desk monitoring, let's go learn, and so forth. Agenda items. Okay, so without further ado, so for, as I emailed out previously, these are the 6 days for child count that'll be due next November. Remember, these are not for kids that were in attendance, but kids that were enrolled. Keep tabs of the number of kids enrolled. And then for child count, we always select the date with the highest. Oh, darn, it shouldn't, darn, I wonder why, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, we always select the date with the highest count. Okay, so those, so these are the counts. And next year, I scheduled 4 LTCT meeting dates, and here are the 4 dates. And I guess as the time nears, I'll send out meeting invites, so that's also on your calendar. But if you want, you can post this on your calendars for next year. And one of the reasons why I don't want to send it out now, because people will change roles and so forth. So I'll probably send out meeting invites like the 1st of September, 1st of, you know, like in October and so forth. Okay, so those are the important dates. Okay, fiscal reminders. Please, a lot of you have submitted your 7th quarter invoices, but quite a few have not. Here is our current balance of, can everyone see? Do I need to make this larger? Can people see the Excel spreadsheet?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great, great. Okay, thank you. Yes, okay, so for Oregon funds, even though we have about one more quarter, 8th quarter invoice, we still have 11.8 million unclaimed of Oregon funds, which for the biennia is about 30%. For IDA, we have about 32% of the biennia unclaimed yet. And for Title 1D, this is one that's really scaring me, is 46% of the biennia amount has not been claimed. But I'm hoping that a lot of school districts and ESDs will claim their funds in the 7th and 8th quarter, because we don't want to return IDA and Title I-D funds back to the feds. That's one. And two, generally for LTCT, we want to keep about like 5 or 10% cash balance going into the next biennium, but then no way, no way at this level. So please, submit your 7th, 8th quarter invoices. And I think I'm caught up. This week I finished up Salem, Kaiser, and Northwest Regional ESD's invoices. So I'm pretty much caught up with all my LTCT and JDIP invoices. So these figures are pretty current. So with their 8th quarter invoices, the annual federal expenditure report, I'll send that out probably like I do every June. The desk monitoring tool, and thank you to Klamath and Forest Grove for submitting their desk monitoring tool already. And remember, the 8th quarter is the true up because even though we paid you on a schedule for the biennial, it's on reimbursement. So 8th quarter is where you have to reconcile. Now, in the agreement, it says that the deadline for the 8th quarter is 45 days after June 30th, which is like August 15th. But then if you can't meet the deadline, don't worry about it. But in reality, our internal deadline is middle of September for us to process, because I think the end of September, that's when we lose access to our current biennial funding. So, for the 1921. So yeah, the real deadline will be like the middle of September, so that, and to get it to me, then I can process, our intern people can process. So we have guaranteed access to 1921 funds. Any questions about that? And for some of you, business people that were, that are used to us, you kind of know this, but we have quite a few that are brand new. And ESSER funds, I talked to our person in EGUMS. He said he was going to work on it today to type it in, because it's kind of painstaking. Like, we have to go through, find all the school districts, amounts, and everything. So the person said they're going to work on it today. So hopefully, if there's no glitches, you'll be able to see your EGUMS amounts for ESSER 2 next week. Any questions for anybody? Okay, that was 7 seconds. Okay, next, Q&A for other sites, opportunity for sites to ask other sites questions. And these are some of the questions that have come up that sites have asked, and other and then the first one is, are other sites are experiencing with mental health providers, partners, experiencing staff shortages? And everybody has the ability to unmute themselves. And if you are experiencing these staffing shortages, how are they overcoming these?
Hey, Sam, this is Carolyn from Kairos Coastline. We're definitely experiencing some shortages and struggles with just general recruitment. And I think part of it's because there's so many other jobs available. And, for us, Medicaid reimbursement rates are not quite enough to cover all the costs. So we pay less than, even sometimes McDonald's for starting people. So I think this is a really big challenge probably for all of us. I am curious about how other people are working with this.
So this is Kathy Wright. I'm in Corvallis, and we're kind of on the Children's Farm Home campus with Trillium. And it is, I almost feel like it's a crisis. They are struggling just to bring kids over on site for school. There's some cottages that are not even coming over because they're not staffed. So they're doing like recruitment bonuses and all sorts of things, but it's bad. It's pretty bad at my site with both day treatment and residential.
Yeah, this is Brian in Douglas County. Same thing, our mental health provider, even before COVID, has really had high turnover rates. And as soon as they get somebody in the LTCT program, they decide that they have a need in the adult side and swap them out. So I don't have any solutions, just sharing in that we're having the same difficulties.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing as Kathy. We've experienced that with that Perry Center, which really are having difficulty finding staff. So it's pretty global. Yeah.
Hey, we're over Oak Grove Academy. We also have that same thing, trying to keep up our staffing levels. Somewhere where I've found some success is connecting with our local universities and trying to get students that might be graduating. We also have for mental health internship programs and reaching out to some grad programs to try to find some mental health practitioners, especially since a couple of us can be supervisors on site. So that's one way that we found trying to get, we've had a few hires that we've gotten through just reaching out to just local institutions, just trying to get in some students that just graduated that are looking possibly to get into the education system or mental health system that really need to get that experience.
This is Candace from the Child Center in Springfield, and I think the mental health, we've done pretty well also with interns and have been able on the mental health side, as we have those people have turned out to be great employees and stay with us for a few years. And we also offer to them the licensure supervision that is the next step for professional mental health people. And so that's been good. I'm concerned this year, I'm going to have a number of teacher positions open. And I'm more concerned about finding good teachers with the districts all hiring like crazy and spreading their classes out. So it may be a few of us in administration with teaching licenses are back in the classroom again this year until we can, sort that out. But that's a big concern for me.
Thank you, everyone. Any others?
Yes, Sam, this is Landon from LeGrand, Oregon. I would say that our mental health partners have been pretty good about being able to recruit people, but we've really struggled this year with mental health funding, being able to match or sustain services. So we've had to be very creative this year in how to keep our doors open due to an inequity in mental health funding matching that of the LTCT educational side funding.
Yeah, I hear that too. I mean, I think that's a concern on our end too, like the EAs get paid more than the skills coaches. I think that's a challenge. And you're right, it's completely inequitable.
A conversation I had with another school district, and they're not LTCT, but they're saying their idea was for them to create their own day treatment program, not with a mental health provider, with their own mental health staff, and then they're going to fund their mental health staff using Student Success dollars, so Student Success Act dollars. And so it would be where it would be a school district run day treatment, not with a nonprofit mental health provider, but with their own staff. And so they were inquiring how to go about that and so forth. So I'm thinking and this is just a suggestion that just popped into my head the other week. Like, what if for our September meeting, I asked somebody from OHA to come and do like a short presentation on the qualification or the licensure requirements for day treatment or residential treatment? Would that be something that our LTCT school districts and ESTs would be interested in listening to?
Yeah, Sam, this is Landon and LeGrand again. I think that would be incredibly beneficial, selfishly speaking for myself, but also I think some clarity around school districts and ESD's ability to potentially tap into Medicaid billing for any behavioral services that we're providing in the educational environment might also help offset costs. That's what LeGrand School District is doing to help basically fund the machine this year.
This is Susan Peck from Southern Oregon ESD. Sam, to your idea about or that one district looking in to provide the therapeutic services as well. One question I would have is what licensure would an administrator need to have in order to be able to supervise and evaluate those school-based therapeutic staff, if that's what they wound up doing?
Yep, that's a very good question. That's something that OHA would have to answer. Just like, for us, for our educational staff, a licensed school administrator can, evaluate and do observations for classroom teachers, not a mental health provider. So that's a good question to ask. Any others? And Landon, most definitely. And then we've had Eli Sanders and Jennifer Dundon, present to our group about Medicaid, but then I'll be more than happy to connect them with you guys again. But yeah, that's always a topic and then there's always new updates and so forth. Any other comments about the shortages? Okay, so another question people asked were summer programs. And before we go into the summer program, so what are some of the things that you guys, everyone is planning on doing for this summer? And I'm going to mute myself.
At the farm home, I've got one teacher who's going to do a 3-week credit recovery for students in residential and for the high school students in day treatment. And then I've got one teacher in day treatment that's actually doing an outdoor school. So it's going to be half days for elementary and middle school students. The high school students in day treatment are going to be kind of the junior leaders. And they'll have an opportunity to do some essays in order to earn a 0.25 of an elective credit. So that is what we are doing.
Thank you.
At Sagebrush and Bend, I have one teacher that's going to work with elementary and middle school students 3 days a week for 4 weeks.
Over on the coast, we're having kind of a different structure for the summer this time, with only 3 days a week for our littles and our little elementary kids and 2 days for middle school. But we've got EAs kind of coming along and some teachers on a few days to continue doing education. And then we have a few field trips planned. I love that someone's doing outdoor school. I think that's awesome. And using the older kids. We've talked about something like that before, but have been a little gun shy. So I'd be so curious to hear how that goes.
In the Grand, we're doing what we're calling extended outdoor school, where we're partnering with a new therapeutic community partner who taps into local farms to work with kids. And so twice a week, we'll be traveling out to specific farms in our valley, but then bringing that into our programs and using those for particular lessons and group conversations and therapy in the program all summer long.
This is Candace again. We usually run an educational program in the summer. This year, our kids go year round, so we always have the mental health, call it kind of summer education light. But this year, my teachers are all burnt out, and I think after COVID, everyone is looking forward to traveling a little bit this summer and having a less intense kind of home life. So we might do a kind of a ninth grade boot camp kind of thing to prepare our eighth graders who are going into high school. Just, you know, what they need to know and kind of help get them moving along. But other than that, I think we're all going to take a rest this year.
And another site, they called me up and then they were wondering if they could use ESSER 2 funds to purchase summer equipment because they're planning on doing outdoor school outdoors because of COVID, you know, indoors and so forth. And I said, most definitely, because if it was, you know, you're changing your summer program from indoors to outdoors, you know, for air circulation and so forth. So then that's more than that'd be an allowable use of ESSER 2 funds, you know, for that. So, but then if you have leftover Oregon funds, LTCT funds, most definitely spread it out over the summer. You don't have to give it back. So that for those of you that are wondering, how are you paying for summer, how other sites are paying for summer school or summer programs, either our ODE LTCT funding or Title 1D can help pay for those supplemental programs. Any other ideas of people working for summer? I mean, like summer programming for our kids? Okay, so that was 7 seconds. And something that I read this morning that I think I could share with everybody is from Special Ed Connection, something about like, oh, let me make this bigger. Is this big enough for people to see? It's tips on avoiding re-traumatization of students with returning with disabilities as they return to and then so forth. And some of the things that they recommend, you know, realize the impact, recognize signs and symptoms, respond by fully addressing it, seek to actively resist re-traumatization, be mindful, experiences, consider their environment. And then on top, they talked about this one case in Boston where because of re-traumatization, there was a placement in residential treatment. This is from 2017. So, so I guess there is precedence, you know. So, yeah, so there, so some recommendations for when kids returning to school. Are people seeing the screen? I hope so.
Sam, do you mind scrolling back down to that case just real quick?
Boston Public Schools.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And this is something like, I remember back in the day, ODE purchased the statewide license for special ed connections for all the SPED directors, but I guess we stopped doing it. So, but then here at ODE, some of us still have the license. So, yep, we get this. And every so often I read it and so forth. We get the daily email. Yep, so these are some hints and so forth. And here's something. I was in a webinar, and these two professors on the East Coast, actually one from Columbia and one from New York State, they're saying it was interesting. They were their research said about 30% of the youths or students in correctional facilities actually understand and comprehend their probation plans or their case plans or the multidisciplinary plans. And then when I talked to a YSEP principal, and then the person said 30% is too high. She thinks it'd be in the teens where teens in correctional facilities truly understand what's expected of them with their parole plans or what their treatment plans are and so forth. And the example that the professor says when they ask a teen, what's in their plan, is a youth may say, oh, I have to do education. But if you drill down to it, it could be, oh, I have to attend school. And if you drill down to it more, I have to attend school 5 days a week. And if you drill down, I have to attend school 5 days a week on time and do good and have good grades and stuff like that. But in the youth's mind, they may be sitting in that meeting and signing their plans and papers, but then they may just, it just might be, oh, I have to do education, not drilling down to the specifics. So that's something to think about for our kids in our day in residential. Like if our kids are sitting in meetings, case planning with parents, just like with IEPs, like, do our students really truly comprehend and understand what is happening and what's expected of them? And, you know, something to think about. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Sam, I'm just wondering what's the possibility of if the courts consistently issue the same thing for a student, right? So if the judge says, hey, you're going to go to this program and you need to complete these things, what are the basic things that the judges across the state of Oregon are saying need to be accomplished by this student? Because that, especially in corrections, that just seems to be one of the if we know what what are the basic expectations that the court has for the student education, I just think that would be really helpful. And I think the judges probably use the same exact expectations, which is when we drill down and start asking the PO what the judge is expecting, there seems to be some language across the board. So if there's something that they could provide, that would be really helpful, because that could guide our conversations, because it's the same thing the student heard in the hearing.
And then, Michael, you bring up a good point. Like, how many of our students truly understand the court process? Like when they're in trial and, you know, sentencing and everything, how many of them truly understand what's happening to them? Yeah. That's a good question. And then I'll send an email to our OIA people asking that question. Are there like kind of generic expectations that family judges or juvenile judges have in relations to education that are pretty much uniform across, right? I think that's what you're asking. Yep, I can send them an email, and then, yeah, and most definitely I can CC you and so forth. Yeah, that's a good thought.
Yeah, Sam, this is Landon in LeGrand again. I would say that this isn't rare. I would say that kids that are in the K-12 rarely understand their individual education plans. And in order to really, truly communicate the plan, you almost have to embed and have a unit within the lesson, breaking it down and helping them process it, and it becomes a part of the curriculum. Because putting a document in front of them or reading through it or going through some sort of adjudication process or whatever that might be, it's not enough time for them to process it. I mean, these are traditionally kids that probably have difficulty learning, and to chunk that and break that down almost needs to be embedded into the program so they truly understand it.
That's great, Landon. Thank you. Yeah, that's really, that's really glad you articulate. Yeah, creating a lesson plan or like a lesson, you know, for the kids to really, to see. Yeah, that's great. Any others? Any other thoughts? Okay, that's 7 seconds. So next, desk monitoring tool. Remember, for the 1921 biennial, because of COVID, we didn't have on-site monitoring, so we have the desk monitoring tool. It was emailed out, and thank you to Klamath and Forest Grove. They already have submitted their desk monitoring tool, and then they're keeping their binders in their office. And so, what I mean by binders, the binders of evidence readily available. If I don't have your monitoring tool for 1921, I can't approve your 8th quarter expenditure. So you have to have, that has to be submitted. So please submit that. And if people need me to resend the monitoring tool, I can resend it out. Next, let's go learn discussion. I'm thinking, and then I have to apologize, like I didn't have the RFP out for this biennia. What if, like, for next biennia, every site can have their own assessment for reading and writing for the pre and post, but then we do the RFP and try to figure out something that we can move together. Would that be too much of a heartache for everybody?
Sam, can you clarify what, like, if, are you asking us if we pull our own like adaptive assessment and not use Let's Go Learn for the year until you submit an RFP, or is Let's Go Learn would still be an option?
It would be where Let's Go Learn would not be an option, but it could be an option if you purchased it on your own, but you could select your own assessment tool.
Okay.
Sam, would this be also done in conjunction with JDEP and YSEP, so they wouldn't have to use the Let's Go Learn as well, or would they still be doing that?
You're the first group that I brought this topic to, so it would be for all three, where all three entities could pick their own.
And would this be effective for this fall?
Yes.
And would there be funding from LTCT, JDEP, YSEP to purchase those, or would we not get would we get additional funds to purchase something different from LTC, the Let's Go Learn, or would they be from our general funds?
It'd be from your contract funds. It wouldn't be additional. And part of it is we use our leftover funding to pay for it. And for some of our programs, the leftover funding is not that great. But then for LTCT, there's a lot of leftover funding and so forth.
Well, I'm okay with going with a different product.
That you choose and you pay for, right?
Correct. Yes. Yep.
Any others?
My staff would like to choose another product as well, because we struggle with Let's Go Learn. Is there a process, Sam, where we need to run it by you once we choose what we choose?
No, you can choose your own for probably for the 21-23 biennium, but once we choose, once an RFP is set, and then once an assessment has been chosen for 23-25, I envision it to be in effect for 6 years, because that's our maximum. Our state contracts can be a maximum of 6 years, so that's why. So we would use the 21-23 biennia to take our time, be thoughtful, and pick an assessment for all three programs for 6 years. Yeah. And last time when we selected the Let's Go Learn, we had representatives from LTCT, YSEP, and JDEP, school district and ESD personnel, be on the screening committee, help us choose, and so forth. So it's not where there's no way it can only be ODE people selecting the tool. It'll be, we'll select people, ask for volunteers. But I think the max would be like 7, because our procurement unit doesn't want too many people on the screening committee.
This is Susan Peck again. The only complaint I get from staff consistently about Let's Go Learn is that they say it appears to look very juvenile. And you could have a 7th or 8th grade student who's doing 1st grade, 3rd grade math or reading, and they just throw their hands up because they think this is silly baby stuff. So if there would be a tool that could assess in the same way or similar way, but just look a little bit more, look a little older, a little more sophisticated. I know our older students who need that level of work would probably buy into it more readily.
Yeah, this is Landon from LeGrand. I agree with what Susan just articulated. And I would add from my perspective and conversations with the teachers, the content seems to be okay, but the assessment tools that indicate skill level don't align with other district assessments that we have. And we get a variety of indicators. You know, Let's Go Learn might say that they're at first grade level. We use our district assessment, and they say that they're at the 5th grade level. There's a significant difference in what the two programs indicate as a functional level for kids. I would be curious, I want to maybe restate, Sam, what I heard you say to make sure that I'm understanding the process. If we go with Let's Go Learn, that's something that can be purchased at the state level with leftover funds, but individually as a site, if we choose to do something else, then that comes out of our contracted amount that we're receiving already. Is that right?
Well, no, so what it is for the current biennium 21-23, we're paying for the Let's Go Learn assessment, and it's like $7.50 per test and we're paying for the lessons, and we're using our leftover funds from 17-19 to pay for it, because for 19-21, all of our, general fund and state school fund, we put that into the contract.
Okay.
I don't hold back. So whatever leftover funds we utilize to go, right? But then for 21-23, we will no longer ODE will no longer contract with Let's Go Learn. But if you wanted to, you could use your general LTCT funds too. Or if you don't have to use Let's Go Learn, you could use your own district, assessments as your pre and your post test. But the pre and the post test is a non-negotiable. It has to be done for kids every 6 months because of the fact that Title 1D requires that. It's a federal requirement. So does that answer your question, Landon?
Absolutely, Sam. No, I appreciate you restating that. I think I understand. For me, whatever process this group goes through, if there's particular sites that are vetting or looking into other programs, I would find it very valuable for that to be a collective process so that we could maybe all learn and look at several different programs at once. Because from my perspective, I'm also looking into purchasing a similar program for my student services department across K-12. So to be able to tap into each other's expertise and lenses in which we evaluate curriculum and programs would be very beneficial. Just my request.
And that's a good thought, Landon. And what we could do is I could send an email to our JDEP, YSEP, and LTCT people asking them what they use. And then when we do the RFP, our procurement office could send the customer reps, are you interested in, in this? That's a good thought. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, Sam. Thank you.
And this is Candace. I think the feedback we've gotten is much what everyone has already said, that the content for the kids who are at a lower grade level is very juvenile, and they also get very frustrated having to do it. And some of it is repetitive. So they may have gotten to a certain level, but they go on, do a couple questions, and it drops them back down to things they've already done. And like, I've already done this. I think anything like some of the reading series that are the high interest, low, reader series, any testing that would do that automatically would be great.
Thank you, Candace. Yes, and then it's hard because like this one kid, because he was in our system either through JDEP, LTCT, and YSEP, he took the Let's Go Learn test 6 times. So it's like, ooh, it does become repetitive for some of our kids that have been within 3 systems for a longer duration. So it's hard to find something that's kind of will be new to the kid every time they take the assessment.
Yeah, Sam, if I could just maybe restate something I said earlier. For our program, for our older kiddos specifically, our 6 through 8 program, it's actually on campus of our middle school. And we try to work very, very hard to integrate those two programs because kids come in and they go back out. That assessment and those skill levels that I had mentioned previously become very important when a kid is transitioning back to their home school, because a lot of decisions are made around where to place that kid and which classes they need. And so a standardized test that's in line with gen ed curriculum, from my vantage point, would be very beneficial, because if you take a kid who struggles and they've worked for a period of time on self-regulation skills, social emotional regulation skills, and then you place them in a class that is either far too easy or far too hard, you really push the boundaries of their ability to regulate and really kind of put them in a spot where they may blow out and have a lot of frustration. So having those two assessment tools align so that we can put those kids in the right place would be best case scenario for the kids transitioning out of the program.
Thank you, Landon. Yes, and it's because the goal of LTCT is to stabilize our students so that they can function and return back to the neighborhood K-12 classroom. Yes, thank you. Most definitely. Yes, for right now, LGL will be available for until like June 30th, but I still need to clarify with JDEP and YSEP and so forth. Yeah. Okay, any other requested agenda items? Or any other questions?
Yes, Sam, can you just restate about using those funds throughout the summer?
Oh, okay. So you're talking about
enrichment?
summer? Okay, yes, okay. Okay, so and I think if I gave examples, I think, for instance, let's say for your classroom, well, for LTCT, a classroom is roughly $214,000 for LTCT. But if your teacher's salary and your EA salaries actually come out to about like 160,000 because lower salary scale, and you have $60,000 left over, you can use those $60,000 for the summer months. You know, because it's
even if it's after the July 1 fiscal year change.
What school districts normally do is they normally pay the teachers through through the summer months also. So Sarah, we could talk about how other districts are doing, how
Okay.
they're doing it. Like they work it out where it's done through the June period, and they
Okay.
spread out. Just like like how your teachers, even though they work from September through June, but then they still receive paychecks in July and August, but then the payment is done through the September through June calendar.
Right, but the summer enrichment would be on top of their regular contract.
Right.
They're not contracted in the summer.
Yeah. So that's where you would have to work with the contract and so forth,
Okay.
to make, and then Title I-D because summer is supplemental. It's not regular school. You could use Title I-D for those salaries also. Yeah. And then you'll always have Title I-D and for next year also. And if you wanted to, if your business office is really being very particular, you could just say, okay, we'll just pay, the salaries using 1921, but for 21-23, we can use the upcoming year's contract and so forth. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Does that answer your question, Sarah?
Yes, I believe so.
Great.
Hey, Sam. I know for us, I maybe want to vet this with you, but if a site had a shortage in funding, could they potentially tap into the summer learning grants that are available this year through ODE to offset the costs of operating or sustaining a summer program for long-term care and treatment if there's no long-term care and treatment funds to pay for a summer program?
I believe so, yes. Like, right, and then I didn't even touch upon, students at Sex Act or the summer learning, the summer learning. And then I have those funds too, like the allocations, and it's quite a bit. you know, if your school district is willing to use some of those funds, most definitely. And also, Landon, all school districts also received ESSER 2 funds. Like, you know, if they're not going to use all of their ESSER 2 funds, you know, they could use some of the, because all of the LTCT sites except for PPS, because PPS had more kids, you know, everyone got $40,000, but PPS got more than 40,000 because they're the numbers. You could use ESSER 2, or your school district could also use ESSER 2 funds.
Okay, I know that because of you're familiar with the circumstances that our program's in, but those ESSER funds we've structured to do what we can to help our mental health partners to keep our program open. But I do know that we have available a substantial amount of resources through that summer programs grant. And I was just thinking that might be a way to help offset for other sites as well, the ability to keep or open or have a summer program.
Yep. And here's like the summer program allocations. For instance, like La Grande, like it'd be like total funding like 885,000. That's quite a bit. Yeah. So that's you know, there's other sources of funding besides our LTCT funds that school districts and ESTs might have access to. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all right. Thank you, everybody. And I'm going to stop the recording right now. Oh, were you guys able to see my screen?
We can now, Sam.
Okay, sorry. I see, that's the thing. I don't know when I'm sharing and when I'm not sharing. So here's like the summer summer thingies. Yeah. So then for yours, here's La Grande, you know, 885, right? The total summer enrichment, academic support, and so forth. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Please have a good weekend. Stay safe and healthy. And yeah, look out for further guidance about masks. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Sam, do you have a second to stay after for a couple questions?
Sure. And I'm going to stop the recording now.